Good morning, welcome to CATEX-TV. My name is Frank Fortunato. This is a live broadcast from Princeton, New Jersey. Today is Tuesday, March 15, 2011, the Ides of March. It's 11:30 a.m. Eastern Daylight Savings Time in the United States. It's 3:30 p.m. in London, 9:30 in Mexico City, and 12:30 in Hamilton. If you need to reach us during the broadcast, you can phone in toll-free at 1-866-67-CATEX. Overseas, our AOL instant mail address is CATEX-TV. It is indeed the Ides of March, 1,967 years ago, in 44 A.D. Julius Caesar was assassinated by a group of Roman noblemen, including Cassius and Brutus. Well, now to our main story. God help Japan. It goes from worst to worst. Dangerous levels of radiation are leaking from the crippled nuclear reactor at Fukushima. It's now forcing 140,000 people to seal themselves indoor today. This is after another explosion and fire dramatically escalated the crisis. In a nationally televised statement just a short while ago, Prime Minister Naoto Kan said radiation had spread from the four stricken reactors of the Fukushima plant along the northern coast. The region, of course, was shattered by the earthquake and the tsunami. The death toll for that now is believed to be upwards more than 10,000 people. Japanese officials told the International Atomic Energy Agency that the reactor fire was in a storage pond and that, quote, radioactivity is being released directly into the atmosphere. According to a spokesman for the Japanese Nuclear Authority, now we are talking about levels that can damage human health. These are readings taken near the area where we believe the releases are happening. Far away, the level should be lower. The Prime Minister in his announcement said, please do not go outside. Please stay indoors. Please close windows and make your homes airtight. Don't turn on ventilators. Please hang your laundry indoors. Fukushima City is jammed with traffic as an exodus of people are trying to flee the region. Most drivers and passengers are wearing masks. Radiation levels in downtown Tokyo have also been noticeably higher. Yesterday we mentioned that AIR had come out with an actual earthquake figure of up to perhaps $35 billion in cost to insurers. They specifically excluded the tsunami toll. They hadn't computed that number yet. Well, here it is today. More than $24 billion of coastal exposures sat in the immediate path of the tsunami. This could mean that we're talking about some $60 billion in losses. This is leading to continued speculation that the April 1 renewals are going to be delayed. Janyata Guin, the company's senior VP in charge of research, told Insurance Day that the replacement value for insured properties within only a mile and a half of the coastline in the four prefectures worst affected by the tsunami was $24 billion. He said the estimates would continue to evolve as more data emerged. He described the total economic impact as an unprecedented event and warned that many commercial properties in Japan by very low limits compared with their replacement value. The big three Japanese primary carriers have continued their rapid descent by losing a combined $8 billion in market capitalization since Friday. Tokyo Marine, MSA&D, and NKSJ holdings account for about 85% of Japanese premiums. It's not thought that they make extensive use of reinsurance. This sparks fear that they might be on the hook for big losses. Tokyo Marine's share price slumped by more than 12% on its Friday close. NKSJ lost 11%, MSA&D lost 9%. However, they did level off a little bit. Trading today continued the decline, but the pace of the drop seems to have slowed down a little bit. Since the start of the week, Tokyo Marine's price has reduced the firm's market capitalization by almost $3.5 billion. MSA&D's market cap fell $2.5 billion. NKS&J's market cap dropped a little bit over $2 billion. The big Japanese carriers have been hit much harder in the markets than their international peers, reflecting the belief from the previous story that the losses will not spread globally to the reinsurance community. In London, though, Amlin and Lancashire lost about 2.5% each, and Hardy's fell by 5.38%. Japan's central bank today made a couple of moves. They pumped billions of more dollars into the financial system to quell fears that the nation's banks could be overwhelmed by the quake and tsunami effects. 2 cash injections totaling 98 billion US came a day after the bank pumped 184 billion into the money markets. The injections have helped stabilize the currency markets, but they've done not much for the Nikkei stock average. That fell as much as 14% today after the Prime Minister warned residents to stay inside. Chaucer, we mentioned them yesterday. They quickly came out with a statement saying that because of Japanese statutes and their own underwriting, they would have a very minimal effect from the earthquake. Now we know why they came out so quickly. They were the first one out. Chaucer's share price has in fact dropped by 5% since the Japanese quake, as investors are digesting the prospect of first quarter losses for Chaucer. One thing that the Insurance Insider is reporting is that Guy Hand's private equity firm Terra Firma is rethinking its interest in possibly acquiring the company. Chaucer said that its specialist nuclear syndicate 1176 excludes losses from earthquakes and tsunamis, and that it doesn't expect any significant insured loss. They said this yesterday. But the syndicate is likely to face losses in its international cat, property, and marine books from the disaster. Together with the losses from the Australian floods and the New Zealand quake of last month, it's expected to make a dent in its capital base. Regarding Terra Firma, it's unclear whether they will lower their sights and go for a lower bid or simply walk away. In a statement to the London Stock Exchange today, Chaucer said that talks with, quote, a number of interested parties relating to a possible offer for the company are ongoing. Terra Firma declined to comment. News from Paris, SCOR is saying that they do not provide any damage or liability cover to nuclear plant operators in Japan, but that they do cover residential homeowners as a reinsurer of Kyosei, which are mutual societies based around the country. The Kyosei policies are understood to be far more likely to include quake cover as standard. SCOR said that it's also involved in covering industrial and commercial risks as a reinsurer of domestic insurers. The French company said that in its worst-case scenario, total non-life losses, pre-tax, net of proportional and non-proportional protection, would not be higher than $257 million US and would probably be lower. Stock market in New York is down about 1.75%. It's down about 210 points right now. We'll go to a word from our sponsors.
Design for peace.
And we were just having a discussion here with our producer, Frank Mazzio, and there is a tremendous amount of confusion regarding the Japanese nuclear situation. Just a day or so ago, there were reports that because of the containment vessels built around the fuel rods, the worst case scenario would be a so-called partial meltdown, and that it would in no way be comparable to Chernobyl back in 1986, because Chernobyl did not have any casement built around the fuel rods. Now, of course, things seem to be dramatically different. And we'll try to find out what's going on here, because clearly the contamination effects have now reached the point where the Prime Minister is on urging people to duct tape their homes. News from London, the Lloyd's Market Association said today that the Lloyd's exposure to the Japanese quake will largely be limited to reinsurance. They apparently didn't take in any primary business there. London market underwriters will not play a key role in the local loss adjustment process. The LMA said since the large majority of Lloyd's Japanese business is written as reinsurers, mostly from local carriers, Lloyd's underwriters will not play a large part in the local loss adjustment process. They went on to say that the continuing problems caused by inoperative communications networks are likely at least to initially slow down the flow of claims information. So that will retard the loss estimates coming from Lime Street for sure. Meanwhile, in Berlin, Angela Merkel has taken very swift and decisive action. She has announced that she's shutting down all 7 German nuclear power plants that began operation before 1980. It's unclear whether they will ever start up again. She announced the closures today under a nuclear policy moratorium and said that they be carried out by government decree, as no agreement with the operators of the plants had been reached. Merkel astonished German politicians by suspending an unpopular coalition decision taken only last fall, under which the life of Germany's 17 nuclear power plants would be extended by years. This has now been dropped. There are 2 big oil refinery fires still going on in Japan. There's a big one in Chiba, which is an industrial suburb of Tokyo. Cosmo Oil Company said that firefighting operations are still continuing there. The Cosmo Oil Company Chiba refinery handles 220,000 barrels of crude a day. The company had said yesterday that the fire at the plant was getting smaller, but it's still not been extinguished. Meanwhile, JX Nippon Oil set a fire at its 145,000 barrel a day Sendai refinery in northern Japan has been extinguished. The Chiba refinery will not reach the international FAC markets, according to the Insurance Insider. Neither the Chiba refinery or the Sendai fire are understood to buy direct or facultative cover on the international reinsurance market, so they too are insured within Japan. Well, with the Japanese tragedy, we've forgotten about the February New Zealand earthquake. Flagstone announced this morning that it expects losses from the February New Zealand quake to be in the range of $60 to $90 million. This is based on a loss estimate for the entire industry of $8 to $12 billion. Flagstone said it was still too early to assess its losses arising from the quake and tsunami in Japan, where it has significant reinsurance coverage. That's not good news for them. Richard Banks in the Insurance Day had a front page article about some reaction from the insurance community to the Solvency II standards. Solvency II still requires significant improvements before it will be fit for purpose, according to European insurers. This is in the wake of the publication of the results of the 5th quantitative impact study. These sound like treatises written by the Soviet government 25 years ago. Once again, though, questions have been raised about the timetable for implementing the European-wide rules, with the Association of British Insurers describing the existing schedule as being on a knife edge. A senior director in Fitch's insurance rating services, David Prowse, noted several non-life insurers may fall short of Solvency II capital requirements as currently drafted. Unless the Solvency II risk charges for non-life business are recalibrated, some insurers may have to recapitalize or reshape their business in order to survive. Lloyd's General Counsel Sean McGovern said, while we remain supportive of the aims of Solvency II, the shortcomings identified in the Qualitative Impact Study 5, particularly around non-life cat risks, still need to be addressed. Well, there's been a lot of talk about Japan, but we can't forget what's going on in Libya. Gaddafi's forces have reached the outskirts of yet another rebel stronghold. The town of Ajdabiya is taking government fire from warplanes and rockets, forcing the rebels to flee. The forces of the dictator are still some 12 miles away, but they're hurling long-range missiles into the city. Warplanes have bombed the western entrance. Gaddafi has scored several recent victories, including the capture of Zawara, the last rebel-held town west of Tripoli. Obviously, forces are now going to begin to descend upon Benghazi. Meanwhile, as Gaddafi is slaughtering his people with the aid of French Mirage jets, or French-built Mirage jets, paid for with Libyan blood oil money, the West continues to talk about whether or not they should establish a no-fly zone. Gaddafi's events will soon supersede their talk, and there'll be no need to have one. Meanwhile, people are dying while people are talking. But meanwhile, in Japan, people are dying and no one's talking. So you can't win either way. Stock market in New York's down about 215 points now. Our thoughts are with our friends in Japan. If we have any breaking news, we'll go back and tell you. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and we'll see you tomorrow.